crying children out front.
Oh,
The auditions are over.
auditions.
Auditions for Something Rotten. Make sure everyone's okay. When I see tears, I worry.
Oh, you're a good principal.
Yeah, it just, energetic release.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Natomas Charter School Board of Directors regular meeting for November 14th, 2022. We'll proceed with roll call. So I'll call us to order at 5:31. And let's confirm we have a quorum. Excellent. Roll call, Doug Gaffney.
Here.
Nita Kushal,
Nita's on her way.
Sean King,
You,
Gina Lee, Dr. Maria Mejorado.
Here.
Pretty Merchant.
Is PT, let me just check and see if she was on the call. She was gonna potentially join us. No, not at this time.
Okay. Jennifer Morgan,
Jennifer will not be joining us today.
Ashante Norton here. Diego.
Here.
Tanvi.
Here.
Lillian.
Here.
And Key.
Here.
Let's proceed with our action item for today. Approve resolution number 1114-2022.01. Oh, we have Nita here. A resolution making certain findings necessary to permit virtual board meetings pursuant to AB 361 and Government Code Section 54953, subsection E. Do I need to get a motion? Okay, if I can get a motion.
that motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. Okay, and we'll take our vote. Doug Gaffney.
Aye.
Nita Kushal.
Yes.
Sean King,
Yes.
Gina Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Maria Mejorado,
Yes.
Ashanti Norton, yes.
Just to provide the board a little context on that particular one. So we're in for those of you that work closely with the legislature and other governmental bodies, you might know that we're in a transitional place about returning back to in-person board meetings. And so currently, under AB 361, that's a resolution that the board can approve, which for the next 30 days allow for members of the governing board to attend virtually if necessary. And so we had two board members that let us know earlier today that that might be the only way that they could attend. In January, there was a law that was passed that actually takes effect in January that at least for 3 years will let board members attend virtually if they have an immediate childcare need, have a communicable disease, are out of town supporting another state or local government entity. And it will allow board members to miss or to attend meetings up to 3 times a year virtually. So we can talk more about that at a future board meeting, but if you're sitting here going, what is all this code that's written in this transitional space about people being able to attend virtually?
Apologies, I was familiar with that. I think some context may have been helpful to further inform your votes.
And I would like for the record to state that Preeti Merchant is now, has joined us via Zoom. And
Hi,
she will
Preeti.
be participating in the roll call vote.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Preeti. All right, let's start with our student updates for Early College Academy. Diego. Oh, do you need the podium or are you all okay?
I can just stand if that's.
Okay.
All right, so first, our seniors have been applying to college, so they had a chance to complete a CSU or UC application during their senior college workshop. And because our seniors have been applying to college, and it was the week of Halloween, ECA had a little spirit week because of it. During the spirit week, each grade could earn points that would earn them a sweet treat at the end of the week during their grade level meeting. And we had dress-up days, like Minion Day, where students would dress up like a minion. And we also had an after-school event, a game night. Then to end off Spirit Week, we had a college door decorating contest. Each grade was able to decorate their academic counselor's door with decoration that corresponded with the college they graduated from.
Oh, that's good.
Then we had the NCS Club Fair to promote pre-existing and new clubs that are coming to NCS. And seniors taking government had their mock elections where they gave a speech that goes for or against certain legislation. And ECA and leading edge students got to vote. Then ECA was represented at the Natomas Unified High School Information Night, where parents and students can learn more about their high school options. And then finally, to end it off, students didn't have workshops on October 20th or the 21st, so that teachers could participate in planning to help shape the future of programs.
Thank you, Diego. For leading edge, Domby?
Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? I'm doing great. I want to know. Hope you enjoyed October, ate a lot of candy, got your jackets out, sweatshirts out. But it's time for Leading Edge's board report. Happy Halloween! Hope you ate a lot of candy and had fun. At Leading Edge, people of all grades wore costumes and we paraded around the Leading Edge hallway. Had our little costume parade. Recent events, in addition to our Halloween spirit, we had some Boogram sales. These are lollipops wrapped in napkins with a boo face, and ASB sold them during lunch to raise money. Students bought Boograms for each other and teachers. We also had our cross-country season end and awards were passed out. So great job to all our students who participated in it, and shout out to our leading edge teacher who took charge of the sport. So let's give them a round of applause. And we had Red Ribbon Week to celebrate a drug-free life and teach students about it. November 10th was the end of trimester 1. Students did an amazing job in the first trimester. The 6th grade boys and girls basketball have started their games, and to support that, Snack Bar has relaunched. So get a few dollars during the game and watch and enjoy your snacks. Both boys and girls won their first 2 games, so woohoo! Coming to academics, we have launched our first Learning Lab session on October 28th, but with a twist. We have made it an enrichment elective program, so students can choose their classes such as chess club, leadership, etc. We also had high school information night, and one of the nights were at Natomas Charter itself. So thank you.
And for our Performing and Fine Arts Academy, Keith.
Good evening, board. How are you all?
Well, good, thank you.
Good. So this is PFBA's report. So Jazz at the Bend happened on October 20th in the Benvenuti. So this show featured our jazz classes like AM Jazz Band, Advanced Jazz Band, and also vocal ensemble. And we also had some guest performers. So congratulations to our performers there. Dance Company held their car wash fundraiser on October 22nd in the parking lot. So this was a chance for them to just raise more money for their upcoming trip to Disneyland, which will happen later in spring. And so they also sold Boograms that were also passed off to students later in the month for Halloween. And Twilight Zone, a study in stage makeup, lighting, and melodrama, opened on October 27th and closed on the 29th in the Black Box Theater. So congratulations to the cast for putting on such an amazing show. The first musical dance happened on October 28th in the amphitheater. So they had like a really fun theme. It was Met Gala themed, so all the kids were dressed up in really fancy clothing. So this was just a chance for them to hang out with their friends, purchase food, and just have an overall fun time being dressed up. Next, ASB held their first ever spooky lunch on October 31st in the amphitheater. So we had a select amount of teachers participate in a teacher tournament pumpkin carving contest, and while they were doing the pumpkin carving, we also had students participate in a costumes contest, and congratulations to seniors for winning that, I guess. Next, we had the ballet classes, Spanish department, orchestra, and Scaberry's middle school students all participate in the Dia de los Muertos celebration. So this happened in the amphitheater, and this was just a chance for the student body to get a taste of the Spanish culture. And so there were student performances that consisted of ballet performances, spoken word, and songs. So congratulations to them for putting on an amazing performance for us to see. The middle school rally, this next point was canceled, so that didn't happen this month. So this brings me to my last point written. The middle school production of Wizard of Oz was opened in the Benvenuti on November 11th and closed on the 12th. So congratulations to them for an amazing performance again. Did you guys see it?
I missed it.
Good.
It was really good. And some other points that weren't written down, but we also had a club fair that was out in the quad. So just for kids to sign up for just different clubs, and we also had the mock elections as well. So good job to the seniors for completing that several week project. And this concludes my report for this month.
Excellent, thank you. And for pursuing academic choices together, we have Lillian Carter.
Birthday.
Yes.
Since our October meeting, PAC students and families have been hard at work and at play. We had a second picture day where students and staff came in looking their best for photos and ID cards. On October 26th, Ms. Carter held her second parent coffee talk where parents came together to talk about assessments, data, and how to use data to plan homeschool instructions. Also on October 26th, we held our first middle school social, which was a game day sponsored by the leadership students. Middle schoolers came for an afternoon of group games, snacks, and community. The leadership group also organized a pumpkin scavenger hunt for all the PAC students and families. Pumpkins are hidden around campus with answers to riddles. The students are given a list of riddles and have to search for the matching pumpkin answers. That's cool. On October 28th, we took a field trip to the Dixon Cole Pumpkin Patch and Corn Maze, where students, staff, and parents took on the challenge of the maze, played in the corn bowl, and went on a hayride. We brought pumpkins back too. PAC also hosted an Esborn book fair, which raised money for new library books. The week of October 31st, we began our Q2 workshops. Students have the opportunity to try out new elective opportunities as well as to continue their favorites. Leadership also hosted a Spirit Week, including dress-up days for costume, Twin Day, Throwback Thursday, and Pajama Day. Finally, last week, we attended a special field trip to PFA's middle school production of The Wizard of Oz. It was a lot of fun to see this production and especially some former PAC students in the cast.
Thank you, Lillian. Okay, we have hearing of the public for items not on the agenda. Nothing received with me. And hearing of the public for items on the agenda. Nothing received on this end. And I'm looking for a motion for the approval of our agenda, please. I so move. I'll second. Thank you. All right, Doug Gaffney,
Yes.
Nita Kushal. Yes. Sean King,
Aye.
Gina Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Maria Mejorado,
Yes.
Pretty Merchant,
Yes,
I'm a yes.
yes.
Thank you, Preeti. All right, and moving on to our consent items, if I can get a motion for approval, please.
Motion. So moved.
Thank you, Sean. And a second?
You can have it.
All right.
Was that Gina?
Doug.
Doug.
Doug, yeah.
We gave it to Doug for the
Yeah.
second.
Break them in.
All right. Roll call vote, please. Doug Gaffney,
Yes.
Nita Kushal,
Yes.
Sean King,
Yes.
Gina Lee,
Yes.
Dr. Maria Mejorado,
Yes.
Pretty Merchant,
Yes,
and I'm a yes as well. All right, for our discussion items, enrollment report.
Yes, so the first item you have tonight is the enrollment report. So these are our enrollment numbers as of October 31st. And Ziva, if you're able to zoom in a little bit, and I'll kind of go through them slowly so we can talk a little bit about it. So up at the top, we have our first academy, historically speaking, which is our leading edge academy. And you can see that our first interim budget enrollment. So basically what we're doing is, as we're looking at this enrollment report, is remember CBEDS Day occurred in October. This is also the time when Anita is actually looking at what was our adopted budget and aligning up with our first interim. So if we look at the enrollment for Leading Edge, that's going to be posted in our first interim budget enrollment, that's 266. That's also our CBEDS enrollment. So on that first Wednesday in October, we were at 266. And on October 31st, we were at 266. And then you can kind of see the breakdown in district, out of district. And so basically we are at, what we're going to be at for first interim budget, which makes sense because we're about a month off of CBEDS. PACT is our next oldest academy, and you can see that 144 was our first interim budget enrollment. That's lower than our adopted budget, but as we've been talking about, as we're rolling into first interim, we're actually making expenditure changes to align us with the current enrollment. And PACT's enrollment fluctuates day by day. So as of October 31st, when these numbers were pulled, it was 142. And then PFAA moving down 752 as of first interim, 752 for CBEDS, 752 on October 31st. PFAA's enrollment tends to stay fairly steady throughout the year. Star Academy, similar to PFAA, stays very steady throughout the year, so 600, 600, 600. And then if we look down at ECA, ECA was 107 as of CBEDS Day, and was at 99 on October 31st, but when I was pulling data on Friday, it was back up to 104, 105. So similar to PACT, their enrollment can kind of fluctuate up or down week by week. And typically what happens at ECA is right now is the time of year in second quarter where enrollment goes down because people will wait until the beginning of the January semester to enroll. Similar sort of thing can happen at PACT as well. So that's where our enrollment is as of October 31st. 3 site-based academies will stay pretty stable throughout the year. PACT and ECA, we will see fluctuations month over month.
And budget update.
Thank you, Susie was gonna bring that up, and while she is getting that up, this is not a full budget update, but basically there's a lot going on here from and if we I wanted to kind of give you an update in between the 45-day that we had emailed out to you guys and went up and the first interim report. So basically, see if you can go to the next slide here. There are a lot of changes that need to happen between now and the first interim report, so my team is really working hard on that, lots of changes. But one of the main things, the difference is that after the state adopted their budget, things changed and stuff too. And not only did they change from when they first released the numbers and they updated the LCAP and stuff, it changed quite a bit. About 3 different times and stuff. So I wanted to roll back the clock on this slide just a little bit. As a reminder, where we're at for the adopted budget, you can see that we are projecting a fund balance this year to end at the $3.3 million. And when the state budget was adopted, our current revised budget, after updating some of those major assumptions, shows that we are projecting now a $15 million fund balance. So on this slide, I just wanted to kind of remind you of the change in our beginning balance. So what this shows was we're estimating that we're going to start this year with 13.2 million. When we closed the books and when we presented the unaudited actuals, it was actually 14.9 million, which the difference was we had the fallout of the 1.7 million. And of that, just as a reminder, almost $900,000 was restricted categorical funds and stuff too. With that, we had some underspending on there and some contract savings. But we are definitely still meeting our fiscal reserves and well on our way to meeting our revised fiscal policy on that. So I just kind of wanted to show you where we started out and how our beginning balance was a little bit higher as we're going into this first interim period. Aziba, you can go to the next slide. So what we did was I mentioned that the local control funding formula calculator changed a couple of times. And Dr. Wood just went over our CBEDS enrollment. But after all those changes he just explained, the net difference was we reduced about 10 was the net difference that we're projecting. And those numbers do reflect the new enrollment and ADA projections on here. So I wanted to kind of just talk to you about the LCFF updates on here. We originally thought we were gonna get $18.5 million. After we were done using the new calculator and the additional money that the state approved with our changes in our enrollment and ADA, we're projecting 19.1 million. So that's an additional 532,153, and that is ongoing money on here. Then also what we found out once books were closed, the state adopted the budget and all the trailer bills came out, is that one of the things that the charter schools got, which is different from school districts. School districts, they get to have a little caveat for a 3-year rolling average for some ADA enrollment projection because a lot of the schools within California are declining. For charter schools, we're always funded on current ADA, but they did put something in 1 year only. And that was what they're calling the charter school enrollment average daily attendance hold harmless relief. So they had talked about adding that into the LCFF calculator. And then after their third revision down the road, they said, no, you're gonna get a special apportionment. It's gonna come in February. And working with our auditors, we're projecting we're gonna get over 406,266. And that is one time on there. So this is just showing, just on the revenue side, those two little pots of money is almost $1 million that we have. And this is gonna be incorporated in the first interim report. So on this one, so earlier tonight, through consent items, we had some proposed changes that you all approved. Thank you very much. And I wanted to kind of give you an update on how that impacted the budget. So the one-time off the salary schedule bonuses we're estimating at 450,000. And you may recall that part of our fund balance when we closed the books, we set aside some money for that on there. So we had that in our fund balance as some planned deficit spending. And then also we brought to you basically salary schedule increases. They vary, but for the most part, it's about an average of 2%, a little higher on some of those. And it's that would be an ongoing change, and it's projected to be about 391,000 on there. And so our plan in the business office, they're working really hard on the one-time bonuses to show up on November 25th. And then the salary schedule increases, those are ongoing increases, which show it in two parts. One would be around December 9th, the ongoing changes, so you'll see your increase going. And then once that's processed, we can run a retro report and do a settle back from the beginning of the year up to that December 9th payroll. So that's the plan for that piece. So if you go to the next slide, this is kind of a recap. If you look at the new revenues, which is the 938,419, and our proposed changes, which are those the one-time bonuses and the increase in the salary schedules of 841, there's a change in the fund balance, a plus just between those two things of 97,000. Not to mention that we had set aside in our fund balance the 450,000 from last year's fallout. The ongoing impact, I just wanted to highlight this, is 391,000. So that's gonna be reflected on our multi-year projection when we go into first interim as we're bringing together all of these plans and stuff too. So we'll open it up for questions, but one of the things that back in December, just next month, we'll be presenting the first interim report, which will have these changes plus all of our carryover plans and as well as a lot of new money included in there.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Any questions for Anita? So I want to give the business office a shout out because typically we would know what our finances are in maybe April or May, maybe June. And this year it was literally like October. And we were still kind of finding out what our finances were in terms of revenues and funding. And so they've been working hard to, get us the most accurate numbers that the legislature has available for us. And then, with you guys approving tonight's consent items, also, compensation that we can pass on directly to our employees. So thank you. And tomorrow, actually, we'll be sending out an announcement to employees to let them know about the compensation.
Excellent.
They'll be excited to hear that. So thank you.
Thank you, thank you. workshop.
Yeah, so we're gonna, if it's okay with the board, we'll take a brief little pause and
Yes.
let our students go home for the evening.
Yes.
And let any administrators who need to chaperone students home for the evening or don't want to stay. Of course, you're always welcome to stay if you want to stay, but we know you have homework and that sort of thing.
And
Happy
the
birthday, Lillian.
celebration.
Yes, happy birthday. Well, short. Thank you for being here, Masa. Thank you for being here. All right, so we'll go ahead and just take a moment to transition here and then we'll get started with us.
Joe,
Yeah.
can we share the screen so I can make sure I get my video and audio?
Okay,
Ziba,
are you talking, are you saying your PowerPoint presentation, Walt?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I can share my screen and
Oh,
make
share your
sure I
screen.
share my sound. Okay,
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Yep, you're sharing now. There's a little bit of a delay, it looks like.
And does
How
he
about that?
have copies of this presentation too, right?
And Walt, just, the board does have physical copies of your presentation as well.
okay, thank you. Can you tell me if you hear this video?
Yes, we
Hear it
can
all
hear
right.
it. Yep.
Okay, then I'm ready to go when you are.
Uh-oh.
We might, hey Ziba, we might need to turn up Walt's audio a little bit.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Now we can hear you, yeah.
I know, I go back.
Tell me, I will not be able to see you, so Joe's going to be my kind of facilitator. If there's any questions or comments to be made, Joe, once we get going, let me know when we're going to get going.
So you guys have a question? Joe had a question.
Okay.
Or Walt, I have a question because he can't see us while he's on it, while he's presenting.
Got it.
All right, so before Walt gets started, just a little context. Some of you have been with the board long enough to remember that before the global pandemic happened, Walt actually came and worked with the board of directors on establishing our board governance handbook. Over the last couple of years, usually at our November meeting, we've taken a little bit of time to review it together as a team. But since it's been 4 years, and you guys recently had the opportunity to work with Walt in strategic planning, and we have a few new board members, we thought we would use tonight as an opportunity for Walt to kind of formally re-walk us back through the materials that are here. This will be an opportunity for you all to ask questions, learn from Walt. He has decades of experience in, all sorts of different board governance formats in various states and stuff. So it's an opportunity for you all to ask questions, but also we can make modifications to our board governance handbook tonight as well. If there's significant changes that we want to make, and then we will bring it back in December for formal approval.
Okay.
All right, Walt, the floor is yours.
Okay, I would like to just add a little bit to that. These are your protocols that were approved by the prior board. So we're not looking to parse the words. We're really focused in on the content and the philosophy and the expectation. So if you have a disagreement to the expectation, you think the philosophy is in error, or there's a significant grammatical problem, I mean, not an insignificant, as you all know, I'm in the commas. And so we're going to move through that. This is normally at least a half a day workshop, so we're going to try to get it done. Joe told me within 4 hours. No, hopefully it'll be done in an hour and a half, 2 hours at the most. But so we won't have a lot of time to parse the actual protocol. So be sure to, if you have a question, concern, or a philosophical point of view that needs to be shared, let me know. I'm going to ask the question that can I move on, and then Joe's going to facilitate that. He's going to watch the room, see if there's any hands up that wants to make a point, and he's going to watch the screen to see if there's anybody pretty and anybody else who are on the screen. I don't know who's on Zoom at this point. So without further ado, first protocol slide is developing protocols. It's something that great teams and functioning teams develop. If it's not clearly understood, it cannot be clearly practiced, and it needs to be in writing. It ideally strengthens the team if there's a clear definition and you practice that. If you don't practice it, it undermines the team. We are very much into the majority vote, so we're going to change anything tonight. And again, the final vote will be in a public action item meeting. But from my objective is to get a consensus. But if we can't get a consensus on a particular protocol, we will go by the supermajority at this point. And Joe, there's 7 board members, 8 board members. How many board members tonight?
So tonight there are 6 board members in the room and 1 board member online, and 1 board member was not able to attend.
Okay, so we're shooting for 5. If we have to get into a vote, we'll have 5, shooting for 5 people, 5 of the 7 to move forward. But again, my ideal is that we're not going to make a lot of massive changes. This slide and the next slide basically highlights the voting responsibilities and conducting the board meeting, all the different protocols that we have within your board handbook. Philosophically, as we've talked about before, the board is about the what, and you've done a very good job of establishing that in your strategic plan. And now the staff is about the how. They need to make that happen for you. Strategic goals and indicators are those metrics that you're going to be looking at in the next couple of months that Joe and his staff are working on. These will be the success indicators. So your goals and success indicators are a combination of the board's point of view by approving them and the staff by presenting them. So fundamentally, you're about the what. Joe and his team is about the how. I'm moving on, Joe. First concept.
Sorry.
Okay, thanks, Joe. The first thing is leadership responsibility and roles of the board. Board members can carry authority only as board, not as individuals. And you got to be very careful about that, because philosophically, you believe that when you're not there, you're not a board member, which is a true statement. But you're going to be perceived at times as if you're a board member. You got to make sure you understand your role. And as I've said to some boards, and I'll say to you, when you become a board member, in some ways, you lose your rights. You lose some of your rights. Because if many of you are parents, I believe in the charter. And so you can't go out and badmouth the teacher like you used to. I'm not saying you did do that, but you got to be very careful in what you say, much more careful as a board member, because you can create liabilities for the charter if you're not careful. If you have for example, you're speaking about an employee, you want to have that employee, you're not happy with the classroom teacher, that spreads, classroom teacher ends up having a job put in jeopardy because of whatever the rumors are, and you're sucked into that. So be very careful to understand, even though you have no authority as a board, as an individual, you only have authority as a board member, that individual responsibility is also there. Again, this emphasis here in the protocol under what I've underlined here or highlighted, it's not the methods to be used that you need to be focused on, it's the results. So the methods are about the staff and the results are about what you're looking for. I used to say to my board, tell me what you want and get out of my way so I can make that happen. This next item down here, and I highlighted it so well that it can't be seen. You're referring any concerns, questions to your superintendent. That's what that's about. I'm glad you have a hard copy, but that last statement is to be effective as a board, you can behave at all times in a professional manner. You'll not obligate the board or the charter. You'll represent the board as a board member. It says here minimally at 2 events a year, and then you will reply and respond in such a way that you let your staff and superintendent know if there's any issues, and you're going to reinforce to the community the key messages agreed upon by the board. Any questions about this protocol?
Nope, none.
There you go. That's exactly what I like to have. Thanks, Joe. I want you to watch this for a minute. See what you.
Yes.
Dr. Wilson, Andy Red is here to see you.
Thank you. Send him in, please.
Dr. Wilson.
Hey, Andy, what you doing up here today?
Well, I have a pretty serious situation to discuss with you.
Oh, let's hear it.
Clarence Hopgood talked to me last Sunday after Sunday school. He told me his daughter's bus driver is, well, he's a reckless driver. He's very concerned about his children's safety. Seemed pretty upset.
I wonder who the driver is.
Rusty Simpson.
Rusty Simpson. I'll call our transportation supervisor and ask him to investigate this situation right away.
That won't be necessary.
Why not?
I've already done it.
What do you mean?
Well, on Monday, I started my investigation. I followed the driver for 3 days and documented everything.
Didn't he have any idea you were following him around?
No, I was very careful. On Monday, I used my daughter's little import job to follow him. And then on Tuesday, I borrowed Lyle Selby's pickup truck. Wednesday, I used the church van to follow him. There's no way he suspected a thing.
Well, Andy, don't you really...
Now, in my investigation, I clocked that he was speeding 23 times. Yeah, 23. On Monday, he hit a curb so hard it knocked several of the children right out of their seats. Tuesday, he shot by the Curley house, even though he could see poor little Harold was chasing after the bus. It's all documented right there.
Wow.
I'll bet you wish you had more board members like me, huh? I take my responsibilities seriously.
He's a very serious board member and very much committed to being a board member. What's the issues here? What are the issues here?
What do you guys say?
Anybody?
Well, he's acting as an individual.
So,
Acting as an individual is what Maria said. Other ideas?
Did it bring the concern to his executive director for handling?
no. He just tried to help the executive director.
Yeah. I don't want himself to do it. Yeah, he appointed himself. Yeah.
Yeah, fundamentally, basically, what effects could Andy's actions have on the charter? I mean, he's out investigating and he's out kind of stirring the pot. It could put the charter at risk. Did Andy violate any ethical tenet? Did he violate anything ethically?
Well, the bus driver didn't know he was being followed and,
Right?
yeah, so that, yeah, he's done it secret.
Who should tell Andy to kind of quit this type of routine or this kind of behavior? Who should tell him that?
The board chair.
It should be his fellow board members or the board president. Do not expect your executive director to admonish his bosses. That's puts your executive director in a very dangerous position because he, on a given evening, you can count to 4 or 5, depending on how many board members you have, and be able to say your executive director, you're no longer employed. So his job is to please you. So try not to put Andy in that type of situation or Joe in that type of situation. But bottom line is the board itself, there are going to be times that Joe may come and say to you, you're kind of acting like an Andy right here, and which will be a kind of an inside clue that maybe you are out of role. The fundamental thing you have to understand as a board, you are a legislative body and a judicial body. You go, what do you mean by legislative body? If you pass board resolutions, you pass budgets, you pass regulations, policies, some of which are employment oriented. Those are all basically legislative types of things. And that becomes the law of the charter. So you are a legislative body and act in that way. You're also a judicial body. Joe has has a great many free opportunities to do things from a professional point of view in hiring and firing. He has some delegated authority as a result of the bylaws and the result of the documents associated with the charter. But fundamentally, most everything, if not everything, can be appealed to the board. And if it's going to be appealed to you, then you've got to protect your judicial integrity. So you have a judicial role. For example, if Joe fires a teacher that appeal comes to you, or if there's a complaint, let's do that. If there's a complaint against a teacher or a complaint against Joe, that comes to you as a legislative body. If you go out and investigate the complaint, then you have a judicial body. If you go out and investigate the complaint, then you compromise your objectivity in being the judge and the jury regarding the decision the board has to make. So Andy was way out of line. He was into being an investigator. That's not a board member's role. Is that any questions about that kind of clarification?
No, the board's good with that.
Moving on, how do we avoid directing charter staff other than the executive director? You have one employee by definition. In essence, you can call him a coach if you want to go put it in relationship to a football team. Joe's your coach. You're the owner of the team. You can hire and help approve the hiring of people. You can approve the firing of people. But ultimately, you give him the players to play the game, do the job that needs to be done. He needs to move the players around in the positions that best serve the charter. So your executive director is your one employee. Everybody else works for him. Any need for clarification on that?
No, they're good.
Direction is the will of the board. Direction is given through the executive director. How do you respond to concerns about the public? The principles is when the public has concerns and somebody gets you, kind of corners you in the market or talks with you, calls you on the phone or email exchange, you need to be open to the comments. You're representing the community, you're representing the parents as a charter board member. You are to respect and be kind towards everyone. And at times that's really difficult because there's some people that you really don't want to be kind to, but in your professional role, you need to understand your role is to listen and to be kind. And you need to listen for understanding. You may not always agree with the person, but very once in a while they'll come up with a good idea. You need to understand it. We are really good at listening, goes in one ear and out the other. Listening for understanding is really seeking to have an understanding of what the person is saying. And then when you get to a point where you go, oh my gosh, he's talking about the teacher, they're talking about the principal or the academy, what's the academy principal called?
Principal, we call them academy principals.
Okay, so academy principal, they start talking about that, you need to defer that, redirect it to the lowest level of on the chain. If there's a complaint against an aide, then it needs to go to the aide and then to the principal. If it's a complaint against the principal, it needs to go to the principal, then to Joe. If it's a complaint against maintenance, you go to the lowest level. That is the process of redirecting. Anybody have any questions about the redirecting process?
No questions.
Okay, what to report to your executive director? When in doubt, report everything. Because you're going to be amazed. You're going to be amazed because you go, I heard that kind of happening, but I'm not sure. So I'm not going to bother Joe. But Joe has someone else who's talked to him, and by you bothering him, it kind of confirms there's multiple sources. Sometimes you hear complaints about some teacher or some person, so a principal. You don't need to get into the discussion, but you hear it. Talk to Joe and say, I'm hearing there's an issue going on. FYI, I'm giving you a heads up. You go, well, but it's not a big deal. Well, that may be one comment here, but he may be getting a couple other comments here, and the multiple comments allow him to kind of bring all the together, all the different input, and then act accordingly. So when in doubt, report to your executive director the things that are about the charter, regarding the charter. Make sense? Any questions?
Nope, no questions.
Any questions?
Good morning, this is Dr. Wilson.
Good morning.
Well, good morning, Andy. What's on your mind?
I have a little situation to talk to you about. I got a phone call from my wife's best friend, Jill Johnson.
Well, let's hear it.
Well, her little girl, Betsy, has been assigned to Miss Robinson's class this year.
Okay.
Jill met with Miss Robinson the first day of school, and she was disappointed with what Miss Robinson has planned for the children this year. See, Betsy can already do the things she plans to teach. And to make matters worse, Miss Robinson's classroom had no decoration at all. No bulletin boards, nothing interesting hanging on the walls.
That doesn't sound like Mrs. Robinson.
So Jill goes to the principal and asks him to reassign Betsy. He refuses, so she asked if I could help.
I see.
So I went down to the school, and sure enough, Miss Robinson's room had nothing in it at all. All the other classrooms are colorful and bright. I can see why a parent wouldn't want their child in that room. So, can I tell Jill that you'll get Betsy moved?
Okay. What are some of the possible problems that Andy's actions can have on the executive director and on the charter? What kind of problems could his behavior or actions have on Joe and the charter?
You guys think there's some problems?
What did Andy do that wasn't appropriate? Well, I mean, he called the CEO. That's appropriate. He listened to the parent. That's appropriate. You don't need to go out and solicit that, but if the parent comes to you, you need to listen. So what's wrong with what Andy did?
Well, he took it upon himself again to confirm, investigate, instead of going to the superintendent.
Could you hear that, Walt?
What was that?
Dr. Mejorado said that Andy took it upon himself to do the investigation again.
Yep. And fundamentally, Andy compounded that by being visible. You don't think anybody saw him there? People sitting there? He may not know. Mrs. Robinson's classroom could have been moved that morning. You never know. Sometimes classrooms. He got himself right in the middle of the issue. The best thing for Andy would have said to do would be to punt it back to we're going to go here. What should have Andy told Jill? Jill's a parent. What should Andy have told Jill?
Talk to the teacher, and if the teacher isn't responsive, then elevate it one level up.
Yep, to the principal, and if you're not happy with the principal, then go to the superintendent. If you're not happy with the superintendent, then you may have it come to you as a complaint against one of those parties. Again, you have a policy, I believe, based upon my conversation with Joe. You don't have to hear every complaint, but you can have a complaint raised against everybody from Joe to the custodian, and you have to deal with that. But the bottom line is telling people who ask you to represent them to go around and not protect the due process rights of your staff is really not ethical. Andy needed to tell Jill to go deal with the teacher, go through the chain of command, for a better use of the word. Okay, here's one of your first protocols. This protocol about what do you do regarding the work of the charter. You'll receive information, you'll repeat the information. This is if somebody complains. You remind the individual that a board member has no authority. You need to make sure they understand you don't have authority to do anything. You're not a decision maker here. You're going to repeat it. You'll share it with Joe, and you're going to redirect them to sharing their thoughts, refer them to the appropriate staff member at the lowest level of the chain. And in a timely manner, you're going to inform the executive director. Any questions about this protocol? Anything that you're not comfortable with?
No questions.
Next one. When interacting with the public, you know that you are to hold the highest level of professional and ethical conduct, including emphasizing the positive. If you have negative things that you feel about the charter, you have closed session places to share that. You have public session places to share that. You have one-on-one conversations with Joe to share that. But it is you as a responsible charter leader are going to, when you're in public, this is a protocol, you're going to agree that you're going to emphasize the positive and share the negative behind the scenes in the proper way. That's what this is about. Anybody uncomfortable with this protocol? Moving on. Board members in the work of the charter shall support the CEO in creating and strengthening connections with the community. That oftentimes is in his goals and his objectives. is a focus in on connecting to the community. Based upon my rumors that I hear around there, Joe's does a great job of doing that. But is anybody want to change anything here?
No.
Nope. Moving on. The role of the board in relationship with the staff and community. Why do you visit academies? The key thing is you're visiting the academies or going to events that sends a real positive message, provides support and encouragement when you go to events or when you go visit the academies. It shows you have a professional courtesy to the leadership and you support them. It demonstrates you have an interest in and support of the work of the students and staff. Bottom line there is, if you happen to have your kids at one of the academies, I think it's really important that you don't just visit that one academy. You're a board member representing all the academies. You have one charter, 5 academies. To make sure that you demonstrate that interest, not just in where your children are, but in other academies. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip this. Basically, this is about the process of. No, I'm going to show it. I think you have it fine.
Well, hello, Andy. How are you?
Hello, Lillian.
My son tells me that your daughter has landed the lead in the upcoming spring school play. So tell me, how does it feel to be the father of a star?
To be honest, I'm sick to death over this.
Why, I was sure that you'd be thrilled about this. Jessica is such a lovely girl. She's such a talented girl, and it's great to have that talent recognized.
Oh, it is, but, and she's on cloud 9. I'm just not sure about this play.
What do you mean?
Well, it's got some dirty words in it that I don't think children should be hearing, much less saying in public. We have strictly forbidden Jessica from using any of those words ever. In fact, I've had to punish her more than once for doing so. It's going to be hard for me to hear her saying those words, and especially doing so under a school sanction. I'm afraid it's sending a mixed message that's just not fair to Jessica.
Andy, I hear what you're saying, and I respect that. But those words are not Jessica's words. Those are the words of her character in the play. And to be honest, you're fighting a losing battle. The kids, I'm sure that they have heard and seen far worse things on TV every night. My women's magazines even have some of those words. Andy, I think that maybe you and Susie have taken a very, very strict position on this.
Lillian, that may be true, but I just can't give up. Worked too hard to raise her the right way. Now, I know I must do something about this. I don't want to hurt Jessica at all.
Well, Andy, I respect your feelings, and I know you want to do right by Jessica, who is a fine and talented girl. This just seems a little harsh.
I'm sorry you feel that way, Miss Johnson, but this community is just not ready to hear children say these words. This is opposed to every standard that the community and the schools are trying to uphold.
But it's just not that easy to change a copyrighted script.
Hey, I know you don't like censorship. I don't either. But unless these words are taken out of the play, I'm going to bring the matter up to the school board. And I'm pretty sure you're not going to like the outcome of that discussion.
Jessica is so excited about this part.
I know. I'm not going to hurt her in any way, but I will not have my daughter or any of the children speaking obscenities in public, especially at an activity sponsored by the school. Now, make the changes I suggested, or I'm going to have to take it to the school board for action.
I guess I need to talk with the principal about this, Andy.
Fine. You do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Okay?
I don't think it's anything that I can do on my own.
Well, I'm going to do what I have to do. All right?
Okay. So, does Andy have the right to speak to Ms. Johnson regarding his concerns for his daughter? Yes or no?
Yes.
I think as a parent.
Yeah, and he's a parent. He has a right to talk to him. What did Andy do wrong?
A lot.
The initial reaction is a lot.
What did he do wrong?
What are some things that did wrong?
Use his position to influence. Yes.
So, yeah, using his position to influence,
Okay. So he threatened her because as a board member, right?
dictating to the teacher how things should be done.
Yeah. So how would you suggest Andy handle the problem then if he asked you? If he came up to you and as a board member, a fellow board member said, I just don't think this play's right for these kids. What would you tell him?
Talk to Joe.
Yeah, okay. The worst thing that's going to happen is if that you, and I've had situations like this, is board members go and make those threats and then go to the board room meeting and make the big scene. And no matter what you do, it's going to be perceived as censoring. You're going to be censoring someone's freedom of speech. Those plays that your students do oftentimes are copyrighted, hopefully always, are copyrighted. So if they deviate from those plays in the way that they're designed, there could be issues there. So Ms. Johnson can't just unilaterally go do something. And here's the other problem. If you censor this play, and it's a big public spectacle, which is what Andy was going to be doing there, you can count on CNN, Fox, and every other media outfit to be outside the door of your boardroom, really pounding on the fact that you're censoring the freedom of speech of your teachers. Now, I would hope, and I'm just assuming this, that you have in place policies that says certain things are not permitted to be, you're not going to have old Calcutta or hair probably in one of your productions. Maybe you are, but hopefully I don't think you would, because you have policies that we say it's PG, showing videos, things like that. There's certain definitions of things that are allowed. And there's usually a process. Usually in your policies, there's a process where that if a play is going to be done, let's say at the Performing Arts Academy, the teacher comes up with that play, gets the approval of the principal, and if that's done, then it's you can rock and roll and do your thing. But when you get in trouble is when someone doesn't go through the process and check with the different individuals. Ideally, the principal has the wisdom to make the decision. This is not an appropriate play. We don't need to do it in a proactive, advanced way. In this case, the water's over the bridge. The play's already been approved. It's already been practiced. It's already a public scene. And if you came to me, I would say to you, you need to chill. You need to chill here. We're going to do the best we can. Let me investigate this. I'm going to check and see if the processes were followed. If it's really controversial, they will not have been followed. And then it's dealt with in an internal manner. It's not a public scene. You go to the principal. I'm hearing that you're having this play go on. Yeah. Do you know about it? No. Our policy says you need to approve it. Did you approve it? No. Let's go to the teacher. Was this play approved? There's a whole different process, and it's a matter of following your policies and your procedures, not a big scene. Does that make sense to you? Anybody have any questions about that?
Any questions from the board? No questions.
And now Joe's written a note for himself to go look and see what kind of policies are in place.
Yep.
I didn't see that. I just assumed that. Okay, here's the next one. Okay, when individually visiting academies or departments as a courtesy, you board members are encouraged to notify the executive director that they will be visiting an academy or department. If you're a parent and you're going to visit your own child's teacher, that's not what you report to Joe. That's your parental responsibility. But if you go to visit the school and visit teachers in general and staff in general, give Joe a heads up and you go, why? Because at times you're going to walk into situations that you need to be aware of that are highly sensitive. If I'm in the process of documenting a teacher or a teacher is going through a very difficult time emotionally and you come in, it may blow the situation up. I had a situation where I had cafeteria manager who was documenting one of her cooks because the cooks couldn't read and fundamentally could not read the recipe, so that created some issues in the cafeteria. And one of my board members casually came in without talking to me one day and walked into the cafeteria and asked the employee, how's it going? And then 2.5 hours later, he got the whole scoop on things. She was empowered, felt good about it. She got her husband to come and they filed a complaint against the supervisor in the board meeting. Husband comes in the board meeting sharing in closed session how that supervisor is mean and obnoxious to his wife. And in the middle of that board meeting, the guy keels over and dies in the middle of my closed session. So that was, I'm not saying the board member made that happen, but that created a rolling event that wasn't really good result. And it did stifle my board meeting that night. And that's a fact. That's a story that I'm not real proud of, but it was a bad time. So, and there's all kinds of other stories with that. So you got to make sure that when you visit, and then that's the only time I had a board member die, a person die in a board meeting. It stifled the whole evening, but anyway, I don't need to talk about that. I'll tell some other time. The critical thing is you need to let him know, because he'll say to you, when you go visit, make a point to go into Josephine's class because Josephine did something good the day before, and or it kind of gives you a good setup on how you can be successful, and you don't walk into something that's not appropriate. At no time while visiting the academy shall board member make promises, overt or implied, or interfere with the administration or involve him or herself in personnel issues. To assist in the manner, the executive director will ensure that teachers know that a teacher does not need to interrupt his or her lesson. If I'm the superintendent CEO, I'll make it very clear. If I have a visitor to come in the classroom, that I used to tell my teachers, have a chair in the back of the classroom. And the visitor is welcome to come sit in the chair and see what's going on. They're not going to disrupt what the teacher's doing. The teacher's there to teach kids, not to be on a show for board members or community members. They're there to teach the kids. So any questions about your protocol here?
No questions.
Okay, the next protocol. Board members are directed, if you ask information from Anita or you ask information from your academy folks, that information, it goes into your database in the decision-making process as you go through. So you have a protocol that says if you have requests for information to staff members, that staff members are directed to relay those requests to their supervisor and to ensure the appropriate information is provided to all board members. What goes to one goes to all. If you happen to have time to go ask questions, that's great. But fundamentally, the answer to those questions go to everyone. The other issue there, if you are asking management staff for requests, that management staff is expected to tell the executive director that you've been asking for information. The executive director should not be surprised. And fundamentally, give that happened. To give a story behind that, I had a board member that went to visit one of my schools, called the principal the night before, and said, I want to come in and visit the school and go around the school. And the principal, who knows that on a given decision, the given night that she could get fired, said, sure, come on over, because she's not stupid. She's going to be politically correct. She's going to make sure the board member's comfortable. She's going to go with the board member and show the board member around because she wants to have that board member to feel good about her. So she did that. Board member, they started the morning off going around and seeing the classrooms. Then I get a call from my special ed director. He goes, whoa, I had to cancel all the subs today because the principal's not available to go to the IEPs that we have. I had nurses scheduled. I have psychologists scheduled. I've had program specialists scheduled. We were going to do a full day of IEPs, pulling teachers out to get the IEPs done so we would be in compliance. And all that had to be canceled. And I go, why? Because the board member came to visit the school. And I'm going, had the board member told me in advance, I would have called the school and said, or usually Ziba would have been the one doing it in your situation. Mrs. Jones wants to come visit the school, she'll be over. And that's when the principal could have said, that's a bad day for me because we have IEPs all day. But she won't do that unless it's properly handled. And so that's why you need to go to your superintendent and make sure that you have that type of relationship. So moving on, unless there's questions about this.
No question.
Okay. The next subject is the agenda that we're getting into. Be informed of each other and demonstrate understanding, reflect on the impact on students, express different points of view, voice community questions and interests, reflect the values, mission, and vision and priorities. Fundamentally, your agenda, I want to talk a little bit about that because I saw tonight on your agenda, you had a pretty inclusive agenda on consent agenda. That's a really smart thing to do. If you talk about things in advance, you've had it posted in advance, you know what's coming in advance, you don't need to rehash because people like me who, happen to be leadership style Y as a D, and we can get into that in some other workshop. I don't want to sit around a meeting and keep rehashing things. And so I really think the consent agenda is a powerful tool that you need to continue to use like you did tonight. And I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, board meetings. They are to be held in public, but they are not open forum town hall meetings. Meaning that you need to be there in a public setting, but just because I come to the board meeting doesn't mean I am now the 9th board member or the 8th board. I don't know how many board members. You have 8 board members, right?
Yep.
If someone comes to that board meeting, they are there to observe. They're not there to be another board member. Meetings will be conducted in a way that allow the public to provide input. I like your agenda, the items on the agenda that are not on the agenda and items that are on the agenda. You have 2 different public comment sections. That's a really, really smart way of doing things. I haven't seen that very often, and that's really good. And so that's a place where community members can communicate. But one of the things that's interesting is oftentimes board members get relaxed and they'll go, okay, somebody comes to the meeting and someone will raise their hand and say, I got a question. That's a problem because if you call on that person, somebody else comes in, they raise their hand and you don't call on them, you're creating a civil rights violation. You're treating one person better than you treat another person. You need to be consistent in how you hold your meetings. So anyway, the key concept here is the board meetings are to be held in public. You can have them at 6 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. They're in public. They're not public ground. They're not open forum town hall meetings. Any questions about this? Moving on.
No question, yeah. And just a little note on that. I mean, we've been very fortunate that throughout the pandemic, our board meetings have been pretty smooth. Not all boards have been that fortunate, but as Walt said, the way we have our public comment structured and when we have received public comment, you guys have done a wonderful job welcoming members of the public to say what they need to say and receive that comment as to follow up. So thank you.
And these are fairly easy for this board because as Joe I think implied there is you're a very functional board. I saw that myself. And so you're just going, well, these are kind of, what's the big deal? If you have these in place, there may be a day where you have a board member or two who becomes a board member that may create some dysfunction. And you have to have a written set of protocols to deal with that, in my opinion. Board meetings are normally on the 2nd Monday of the month. Is that still true?
That is still true.
And it starts at 5:30?
Correct.
And the public session starts at 6:15?
Correct.
Okay, study sessions may be scheduled. Any questions on the next one? I'm moving on. I'm not going to ask that. The next one, executive director, supportive staff creates the agenda. Board members may request items. I've actually had board members tell me they've been told they cannot request an item be placed on the agenda. I said, you cannot be serious. You have all the right to the community and a little bit more. You can request items to be on the agenda. Where they go is based upon the executive director's staff. It could go into discussion, it could go into action, and the board president. They can set what where the sequence of when the item comes up. You can always get on the agenda. Any questions on this one?
Just a highlight I was going to point out for the board is on all of our agendas towards the end of the meeting, we always have future board agenda items. So that's one way that you can always share with us, hey, I'd like us to have an item on X, Y, and Z. And certainly, at any time during the month, you can give me a call, we can talk about it and that sort of thing. And Jen's not here tonight, but before each board meeting, she and I will usually go over the agenda together. If there's any clarifying questions she has or things that she wants to add and that sort of thing, we will do that as well. But those are some different opportunities. But contrary to what that other board member told Walt, you can add items to the agenda. Yeah, Shante had a question, Walt.
Yes, please.
There's that one part on our agenda where we approve the agenda.
Yes.
So what is the function of that really? Because we can't add items because they haven't been properly
You can in fact add items. So let me go through a couple of things here. First of all, why it's there primarily is used as a tool to adjust the agenda. Normally you publish an agenda, not normally, at least 72 hours in advance. And if I say something, let me finish it, Joe. If I say something that's changed, let me know, but this is what I understand.
Yeah.
Okay, 72 hours. But the actual structure of the agenda could be changed as long as people understand the items were on the agenda and you can see the item. So that's normally why that's there. That gives the opportunity to pull an item from the consent agenda. I want to talk about that item on the consent agenda. We're going to pull it. It'll become action item 7B, or whatever number you want to, the last number item, or you can go here or go there. That's what you adjust the agenda and then you approve it. Concept one, do you understand that part? Any questions about that part?
I got it, yeah.
And that's primarily
the
what
second part
is that sometimes in the past, a board member has wanted a consent item to have more of a discussion. Okay. And so then we can move it from consent to action. That's why we've had it. Now, Walt's going to teach all of us, including me, something with his step 2 that I had no idea about.
Okay. Okay. If an item comes up, once the agenda is published 72 hours in advance, if something comes up it doesn't have to be an emergency, but has to be of significant change that cannot be deferred to another time. A reasonable person would say this is at a proper time to talk about it. We shouldn't be deferring it. You can add an item to be on the agenda. All of a sudden the COVID regulations change. You could add an item to be on the agenda. How you do that, it takes a 2/3 vote of the board to add it to the agenda, just to add the item to the agenda. You can't get 2/3 to add the item to the agenda, then it cannot be added. So you add it to the agenda with a 2/3 vote and that's approved. Once you approve it, then you can act on it. So there's 2 actions that takes place, 1 to put it on the agenda and 2 on the actual whatever you want to have accomplished. Do you understand what I just said? Any questions about that? And I strongly believe that's still accurate.
No questions from the board, Walt.
Okay, the other way you're dealing with it is you can have a special board meeting or a board meeting with a 24-hour notice. You can do that also. You can do board meetings and have a 24-hour notice on the agenda and a special agenda which is focused on just one item. You can do that also. But there's a variety of ways to skin that cat. So moving on.
Yeah. Okay. Like when we had to do school closure, we had to do a special board meeting because we had to do it right away.
And you can have an emergency board meeting and have it within half an hour, I think it is. Mm-hmm. If you have a fire and you had to do something really quick, you could do it very quickly if you had to. No, I don't think I've ever had an emergency board meeting because usually if it's an emergency, I will just take and make it happen. Okay.
Don't jinx us.
I know we've had first on this board.
I'm going to tell you the trick of trick of the trade that I used to do. Sometimes you really want to have a board meeting, but you really don't have the time to have it, or board members the schedules are crazy. I would do this. I would say to board members, I intend to do ABC. If you have a problem with that, tell me and we'll No, I don't do that. I'm going to do ABC. Do you want to have a board meeting to discuss this? No, there's no reason to. So I end up doing it. So there's a way you can get things done. That's not really the best way of doing things, but there's a way that if I'm as a CEO and need to get something done, there's a way to make sure I can get a sense of that from where the board's at. If the board doesn't really care, I can make it happen. This is kind of really tangential to what we're on right now, but I think it'll pertain a little bit later. is the CEO, executive director, subject to the Brown Act? Yes or no?
No.
No.
The answer is no. They are not subject to the Brown Act. Joe can know the vote of every one of you in advance of a board meeting. He can know everything. The key thing is he cannot be a contributor to a serial board meeting. He can't say to you, what are you going to vote on this? And I only did this once. What are you going to vote on this? And you say, yeah, I want to vote yes for it. Well, you're going to vote. Oh, you're going to vote on it. Another conversation. Oh, yeah, Josephine says she's going to vote for it. Will you vote for it? You can't do that. That's a serial board meeting. Okay, moving on. Ooh, this is a good one. I'm sure you've done this to Joe. Joe's probably having a
So that concludes staff's recommendations on our lobbying positions for the upcoming General Assembly session. You've also had a chance to review the information that are in your board packets.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. Do I hear a motion to approve the legislative positions packet as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion before we vote?
I think we should change our position on all-day kindergarten. I think Dr. Wilson has not done enough research.
Dr. Wilson, do you have any comments?
I would.
Well, we've been working on this legislative package for several months, and I specifically asked that any board members who had questions or concerns contact me when we sent the draft proposals out 3 weeks ago. I really wish that we had addressed this issue a lot earlier.
Okay, what do you think the motive of Andy was to challenge the superintendent in a public meeting? He basically told Dr. Wilson hadn't done enough research. What do you think Andy's motive was?
To table the vote?
Table the vote, power, those are the two things that.
If I was a Dr. Russell, I'd interpret it as a way to show me up, make me look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, let's see the next one. How would you have felt if you were the superintendent and were told in a public meeting you hadn't done enough research? Right? That's what he said.
Right.
Okay, then the last thing, this is the most important thing I think you need to get out of this. Who should remind Andy that he should be prepared for the board meeting and submit questions in advance?
Board president.
They're all pointing to Ashante.
But you, very candidly, you got to be careful with that. And I'm going to, first of all, you may all be in that position. Understand the board president is focused on facilitating the meeting. So they may not catch things like that. So it's not okay for you to sit back and go, oh, we don't have anything to do with it. Each of you own this. And sometimes Andy's best friend may be on the board or a close friend and could get away with saying, Andy, you shouldn't do that. Andy, this is what I would, if I was on the board, I would have said this, Andy, you didn't do your homework. Don't blame Dr. Russell. Over 3 months, we've been seeking input and you still didn't do your homework. I'd turn that thing on him and make him look bad, not Dr. Russell. But don't let Joe have to do that. You need to do that for one another. If you do that and you call each other on it, then your behavior is going to change. You don't have the problem, but if you ever have a board member, that's going to be how you can handle it. You'll handle it more tactfully than I would probably. Okay, moving on, Joe?
Yes, you can move forward.
Okay, this whole concept on this one is what goes to one goes to all. And there's any questions on this one? If not, I'm gonna move on. If you have a question the night of a board meeting,
No
it's
question.
spontaneous, and it's going to surprise your directors. I have a question on the budget. You make sure, Anita, you may not know this. I didn't give you the question in advance so you could be prepared. But here's my question. And normally, what I would do what I strongly recommend, if you have a question that you haven't asked before the board meeting, you ask Joe, and Joe can look at Anita or his staff and say, Anita, why don't you answer that? Or we're not prepared to answer that tonight. I'll bring you back that information. But those spontaneous questions can really make people look bad. Yes, Wilson.
I was just gonna add, it's been a little while since we've had this, but this is also one of the reasons why you guys get the agenda notes before the board meeting, is it's trying to provide you a little additional detail for each of the items. But sometimes someone will email me, but I'll choose Ashante and say, well, hey, I have a question about item, XYZ. And that's why you'll usually get a response from me that a board member asked a question about, and here's the response to it. So that's really, this part is where that sort of comes from.
Moving on.
Yes, you can move forward.
I went backwards. Individual board members self-monitored public meeting laws, including limiting closed session to legally appropriate agenda items. Closed session is not the time where you just share everything about you don't want to share in public. Your meetings are to be in public. It should be a properly agendized closed session item to talk about in a closed session. Be careful there, you'll violate the Brown Act. Ready, move on?
Yes, you can move forward.
Top 10 Brown Act mistakes. First one, reach consensus outside board meeting. You end up get a majority of the quorum of the board. The quorums, you got 8 people on the board, Joe?
Right, yep.
So that's 4 people. You get 4 people talking about the item and you come to an agreement in advance of the meeting, that's a Brown Act violation. Use emails to debate rather than update. You know, you end up emailing one another. If you're emailing one another, you're creating a serial board meeting. You can't do that. Do you ever do that? Ever email your fellow board members individually?
No, they're very good about it.
Good. Taking action of a non-agendized matter. You oftentimes somebody could, how you slip into that, somebody comes forward, you know, we're painting the school. As an example, we're painting the school and some community member comes forward the night, you know, I saw your paint crew out painting that school. You know, why don't you paint it green? It really looked great. And the board goes to the Joe, make that school be green, not on the agenda. You go paint the school green. About a month later, the next meeting, community member living next to that school said, my house is green. It looks like my house is part of the school. And so I don't appreciate it. And where did you make this decision? We did it at a board meeting. Was it agendized? No. You may end up having to repaint the school in that case, and his house possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, not allowing public to comment. You've already got that covered. You know you have to do that. Not setting a time limit to speak. How much time as a community member can I speak on one agenda item?
2 minutes.
How much, if I have 10 people, how much time can I speak on the item? On the
20
same
minutes
item?
per item.
20 minutes per item. Okay, I've got 10 people who want to talk on the pro of the item, and I got one person who wants to talk on the con to the item. How much time does one person get?
2 minutes.
2 minutes each.
Each one person gets 2 minutes.
No, you have one 20-minute session. Each side gets an equal portion. 10 people, they get same as one person. You have 2 pros and cons. It's not 2 minutes a person. It's 2 minutes a person or 20 minutes for the item. So you have 100 people wanting to talk and you have one on the other side. It's you tell the 10 or the 100 people saying you better have a spokesperson for you because you only have 10 minutes. No. So what I'm saying is it's got to be a balance. Just because you have the numbers doesn't mean you have more time.
So how do you facilitate that? I mean, you know, fortunately, we've only had, you know, 1 or 2 public comments in any given board meeting. So it's not really been something we've run into. But is it like on the comment card, you'll sort of ask them, you know, are you in support of this issue or against this issue? And that way you can sort of. Usually
that's the case. If you have a comment card, you have a comment card, and that the comment card is not legally binding. You don't have to have one. Someone can stand up and speak. You can say, it appears that we have people who have comments on this item. Are the people on pros and cons of this item? Usually in the comments card, you can find that out. You make that decision. Usually you're going to get, you know, when I was in Natomas, we had 450, 500 people every board meeting for almost months at a time. So we'd have to really make the big focus on make sure you have the people there that are going to speak on behalf of the people who have the strong beliefs. Maybe you'll each have 10 minutes. Each point of view has 10 minutes, and you each have to present. The biggest mistake people make politically is they hammer on the 20 minutes. You have 20 minutes, and then you're done. And cut it off. You look like you're ogres. You look like you're not wanting to hear people. So I normally recommend to boards, you know, go your 20 minutes, let and go, we've got, and make the statement that we're at the point of the 20 minutes is now over, your 10 minutes is now over. If there's no objection, I'm board president, I'm going to extend the time by 5 more minutes. Extend it by 5 or 10 minutes. Be gracious in extending it instead of legalistically saying 20 minutes. You want to keep to the 20-minute rule, but that's a foundation that you can give yourself some flexibility on. Does that make sense? You're not going to have a problem, but you ever have that many people show up, you learn that kind of stuff.
And Ziva and I we'll talk to Walt a little further offline and look at what some of the other districts in the area are doing, just so that we have that protocol, sort of prepared.
Yeah, I mean, you check it out. If I'm wrong on my 10-10, that's what I focused in on my whole career, was the balance of the two parties. Just because you have 100 people doesn't mean you get to have the majority of the time.
We've also typically tried to mirror what Natomas Unified does, just for consistency, because we already kind of have where families are confused that we are a separate board from Natomas Unified. So we'll also reach out to them. So I know they've been, over the last year, really updating their public comments process as well. And Ziva and I have been periodically touching base with them, just to, like I said, limit the confusion in the community and have greater consistency.
Yeah, and how your agenda is set up, how your public comments set up, gives you all that. I mean, when I came into Natomas 10 years ago, they used to have 4 or 5 hour board meetings before I got there, which was brain dead after 2 hours. That's not good. So we cut it down to about 1.5 hours to 2 hours. Okay, cutting negative comments about staff. In the old days, if someone came to talk about a staff member, you'd shut it down, saying you cannot share it about the staff member in a public meeting. In today's world, if someone comes to you complaining about a teacher or Joe or whatever, my strong advice is you have to receive the comments, but you try to bring them into closed session. We prefer to hear comments regarding staff in closed session. Will you be willing to come back to the closed session meeting of next board meeting to share your concerns? No, I won't. Would you be willing to do it in closed session following this meeting? Yeah, I'll wait for that and I'll do that. So you want to try to not leave a forum where people can embarrass one another, let alone themselves. Moving on. Do you ever have student expulsions?
Rarely.
Okay. If you have expulsions, and it's kind of a principle that applies to other things too, but definitely for expulsions. If you have an expulsion and staff is recommending to the board to expel a student and goes through a presentation, and the parent goes through their presentation, and it's over with, and the board's going to be deliberating, the parents leave the room, does the staff need to leave the room?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely, yes. The staff is advocating 2 different positions. The judicial body needs to hear the matter on their own without being influenced. If the staff is there, the parents have the right to be there. The key thing is, if you get into that situation, to protect yourself from a lot of unnecessary lawsuits, make sure you have a lawyer for the board. That's the biggest mistake that gets made, is when board members don't have a lawyer there. They do it procedurally inappropriately. And when you get appealed to the Superior Court, that appeal goes to the court. And what the court looks at is not the substance of why you made the decision, was the process done properly. If it's done properly, they give the judicial freedom to the board to make the decision. But if it's not done properly, it's a big problem. So make sure you have an attorney there if you do that, in my opinion.
Fortunately, suspensions and expulsions are kind of rare for us. So whenever we have anything that looks like that, we do work very closely with Young Committee and Core, just that, what's the latest and greatest version of the law that we need to do. And at least the one time Addie and I had prepared for an expulsion that we were going to potentially bring to you, our plan was that you would have had access to legal counsel in the room during that.
Yeah, the biggest mistake superintendents make is they're trying to save money in that case, and they're penny rich and dollar poor. Okay, and usually politically poor too, because things blow up. Number 2, refusing to cure. That's point. If you make a Brown Act violation, somebody says you violated the Brown Act, cure it. Don't say I'm God, I'm all powerful, we can violate the Brown Act and we don't care. Cure it, solve it, and the way to cure it is you redo it. About the house situation, you put the item back on the agenda. We're painting the school. You prove it on the agenda. It's acted on the agenda. The community member was there to hear it, and you can still paint the school green, but you do it in a proper way. Okay, not developing board protocols is the number one reason Brown Act violation. Okay, so now we're into the Brown Act. Email social communication. Do any of you have Facebook pages?
Yes, lots of positive nods.
Anybody have any other social media? Same thing. Do you ever post in anything that that would be defined as social media, anything regarding the charter?
I see they're nodding no.
That's good. I'm glad you did the nodding no. Because if you post it and you go, but they have to be friends. If I can find access to it, and 4 of you see the post, 3 other people see the post that you put on your Facebook, you've just created a serial board meeting and violated the Brown Act. So if you're posting things regarding the charter, they need to be things, basically the same things that are posted on the charter's website. Don't be posting for the charter. Let the charter post it. Okay. And do board members get information from you? Do you do a blind CC or do you CC board members for information?
When I send things to the board, they are CC, not BCC.
That's perfect. You don't. I used to recommend you always, superintendent said, send something to board members to BCC because they don't see who individuals. So you're telling me that your board members know that it was sent to one board member, it was sent to all of them. They can see their names there, right?
Yeah, we have an email group, but yes, it works. It works like that.
Yeah, and so I've been recommended to do that recently because if you don't do it that way, it looks like you're trying to circumvent the Brown Act. You're trying to hide. You're not, but that's what it looks like. It looks bad. So fundamentally, you do not reply to all. They know that too, right?
Yes, all nodding yes.
Okay. Cell phones, when you deal with cell phones, are set on silent or vibrate like mine wasn't tonight. Directors will be discreet in checking your cell phones as necessary. Any questions about that?
Nope, no questions.
I don't know what this is in this one. Oh. Joe, what time do you want to end? What's the latest I can go?
If you had some coffee, we
Well,
could.
this is an advanced group. How much longer do you think you need to go?
I think I need probably about 45 minutes.
Yeah, everyone, that's fine. Yeah.
Basically, this is about a gentleman who talked to Andy on a one-to-one in a back getting coffee, and Andy told him all about a closed session item. It's not appropriate.
Oh, no, we don't do that.
No. Board members individually and collectively demonstrate confidentiality as appropriate as outlined through the mandates of the Ed Code. Basically, you hold the confidentiality. What is said in closed session stays in closed session. And that's been a real problem with the recent virtual board meetings, because there've been board meetings where family members are overhearing closed session items. And that's created some legal issues in districts and charters, mainly districts. So you got to be very careful if you talk about closed session item that your family members are not there to hear that either if it's virtual. Right, Pretty?
Hey, Pretty.
That's right.
Okay, making sure it's still there. Okay.
The way
Going
we
on.
navigated this during the pandemic, and if we had to do virtual sessions, we would again, is board members wore headphones.
Oh,
Yes,
yes,
they
always.
are required to.
Always.
That's great.
I was in part of that era,
Yeah.
luckily.
That's great. Okay, the next one, board members review the information provided them. I had a board member one time years and years ago, and before we had the electronic packets, we used to send home packets in closed envelopes with a tape seal so people wouldn't open them. And he came to the board meeting and opened his envelope in front of all the other board members who were not happy campers. So you need to, the bottom line is, there'll be times, hopefully not very often, very seldom, everything will be going on at home, crazy things happen, and you haven't got to the material so you needed to read in advance of the meeting. If you're in that position, what do you think I'm gonna recommend to you?
You don't get to review the packet materials. What do you think Walt is going to recommend to you?
No, abstain.
Gina says, don't vote or abstain.
No, you need to vote. Basically, you need to vote but you need to basically keep your mouth quiet. That's right. Okay, if you don't come prepared, the worst thing to do is like go into class, in school, go to class, you're not prepared, and ask a bunch of stupid questions.
So are you telling them to sit silent in shame? Is that what
But if you don't get your preparation done, but you gotta vote on some items, but you just hope you're not the first one to vote. And most of the items. I'm not gonna go. Anyway, just be prepared what that's about. Okay, the next one, this is critical. This is a courtesy, not a mandate. But if you're in a minority position and the rest of the board doesn't know why you're in the minority position, that's not fair to your rest of your board meetings. There's something that you may know or about that may change their vote. So if they're not sure about it, they have the right to say to you, Joe, I'm not, you voted no on that. I don't understand why you voted no. And this is a protocol, frankly speaking, be honest with you, open with you, that came from one of my board meetings. I had a board member who was elected by the Teachers Association to basically fire me. She ended up thankfully naming a school after me, but she voted no on every single time my contract came up. And nobody asked her why. And somebody had asked her why, she wouldn't have done it, because if she would have said a reason, she may not have got reelected. And two, she was feeding to her constituents and at the cost of being in the minority position. So this is where that came from, as a courtesy. You can't make someone do it, but you can say, maybe I'll change my vote. And that leads into another thing that's really technical. If you change your vote, if I do that, I say to Joe, why you vote no? And he explains why, and I go, wow, you got a good point. I want to reconsider the vote. You can reconsider a vote the night of the meeting or even after that meeting, but the only ones that can reconsider are the ones who are in the majority position. So if I voted no, I cannot get it to be reconsidered because I was in the minority position. If I was one of the yeses, the majority position, I can vote to reconsider it on a majority vote of the board. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
But doesn't the discussion occur after the motion and the second happens and then discussion, so the vote hasn't actually occurred?
If you're doing it the way Roberts wants you to do it, you'd have a motion, a second, and a discussion. But for the majority of board meetings that I see, they have discussion, motion, decision.
Okay.
If you're doing that, go ahead. How do you do it?
No, I just wanted clarification on that. Thank you.
Okay, but you got my curiosity aroused. Do you do motion, discussion, decision, or do you do discussion, motion, decision?
Discussion, decision, motion, or discussion, motion, second, vote.
Yeah, that's what happened. I don't make a comment. Motion's made, and then I vote no. And you go, why'd you vote no? You didn't say anything. Because I don't like that. And they may have good reason, but that's what this is for. That makes sense?
Yep, thank you.
Yes, makes sense. Thanks, Will.
But you need to think about, maybe your sequence of motions need to be thought about. I don't think we have a protocol from that, but it'd be a lot cleaner. Roberts would say it'd be a lot cleaner to do it the other way. Politically, a little more dangerous though. Okay, moving on. Abstention. When abstaining because there may be a perception of bias, a member is encouraged to state. You have a policy that says board members can abstain, right, Joe?
Yes.
So legally speaking, you do not have the right to abstain. You have a responsibility to represent the community and vote on every item coming before the board, even if you're expelling Charles Manson's son who lives next door to you. you have an obligation to vote on it. You go, I don't want to vote on it because if I do, Charles is going to come to my house. So you're fearful, or you have a cousin. You know, I had a board member, actually, we had to expel the board member's kid. That was a thrill too, you know, and so, and anyway, so you have the abstention ability. We're not going to, unless something changes, that's what we're going to continue. I would encourage you to really think about that because I personally, it opens a Pandora's box if you start having people abstain. Any questions about abstention?
Any questions from the board? No, none.
Board members will model professional behavior by being polite and respectful of all points of view held by the fellow governance team members. I think that's self-explanatory. Now, if you are in the minority position, you are by definition, by your protocols, compelled to support the position. You don't necessarily have to agree to it. You basically support it. You say something to the effect, I disagree with the majority view of the board, but I support the decision. Once the decision's made, we're going to run that play and I'm going to support it. It's like having a football team. You know, once someone makes a decision, you're going to run right. And you say, no, I don't want to run right. That's not the best play. We should go left. If you don't run right, the play's not going to be successful. You need to agree to support it. If you can't support it publicly, the last paragraph comes in and offends your moral or personal code. The board member is expected at a minimum to refrain from undermining the decision. That makes sense? Any question? Moving on.
No.
No question.
Okay, thank you. Now, back to our presentation. What you have here, do you follow this? Right now on your agenda, when you have an item, you ask the community for comments on it. They stop. Staff presents. Any questions from the board, from the board on the staff? Staff is done. No more questions. Now it's board discussion, deliberation. You don't talk to staff. You don't talk to the community. You discuss and deliberate and decide. Is that how you do it?
Yes.
Can you repeat it, Walt?
Okay, let's go. Let's I'll give you an example. Let me, here's what often happens. We get input from the community. Board members ask questions. Staff members then present. Board member asks questions. Community member raises their hand. Board member says, what's your question? They ask a question. Or board members go, Joe, you're a painter. What color would you recommend painting the school? Oh, that's a good idea. They have lots of interaction going on. The point of this process is you hear from the community, it's done. Because it's your meeting, not the community meeting. Staff, once you hear from staff, it's done. And then you deliberate and you go, what happens if we have a question from staff? The secretary to the board, you ask the secretary to the board, I have a question. Can you answer it? Who's the secretary to the board?
Ziba. Sorry, as a role, Ashante, yeah.
Okay, so that's different. So let's get into that a little bit. In a traditional school district, a superintendent is the superintendent of the district and secretary to the board. The actual separate secretary, much like in your situation, is Ziba, but Ziba works for the superintendent. Who prepares the minutes of the board meeting? Ziba, right?
Ziba does, yeah.
Who reviews those minutes?
The board, the whole board does.
The whole board does. Joe, do you review those minutes?
Yes.
When Ziba gets the minutes done, and did she ask you to look at them once in a while?
Yes.
And that goes before anybody else sees it, right?
Correct.
Fundamentally, you're functioning as in the normal role that superintendents function as a secretary to the board. She is basically your hands and feet. So I don't know if you have a title position called secretary, and if it's in your bylaws, then that's what you have, unless you change your bylaws. If you don't, I would encourage you to change that definition and have the secretary to the board be the superintendent, okay, or the CEO in this case. Now that's just process. Let me go a little bit deeper. If you have a question as a board, after staff and community is inputted, staff is inputted, you go to your one employee, which is your director, executive director, and you say, Joe, I got a question. I don't understand the budget, this item on the budget. I don't understand it. Your natural tendency would be to ask Anita. No, she works for Joe. You ask Joe. Joe can go to Anita and say, Anita, could you answer that question? You can get to other, you can go, Joe, I'm really curious about the painting of the school. Joe can go, there's a painter in the room tonight. John, what's your thought? Joe becomes the screening for that as your one employee. So you can ask questions, but normally you don't ask questions after you get the input. Does that make input from community, input from staff, boards of discussion and deliberation? Don't reopen it to the floor. If you do, you're creating a bad precedent. Did I confuse too much?
No, I think you're okay. Yeah.
No, how long is the board meeting? How long are the agenda items? Do you keep to the 10-minute rule?
It depends on the item, but we try to. The only ones that can be a little longer are some of the presentations, especially if we're reviewing CASP data or something like that. But we try to keep to the 10, 15-minute rule.
And who approves them if you go beyond 10 minutes? It says here, the chair.
We've not typically done that.
No.
Yeah.
Limit.
So what would that look like in practice? Would that be where I, as the superintendent, am asking the board for permission for this item to go beyond 10 minutes, or how does that look?
No, basically, yeah, it could be that, but usually in advance of the meeting, I talk with the board president and say, we got a budget presentation, it's gonna take 30 minutes. Is that okay? We do that? Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Approval of the chair. It's not of the board, it's of the chair. We have a, PFA or the Performing Arts Academy wants to do a kind of a production. It'll take 35, 40 minutes. Is that okay? If I'm chair, I'm going to go, no, that's not okay. This is not a presentation center. This is a board meeting.
So Jen and I actually do that in a probably more collaborative way than I'll describe it. When we go through the agenda, we will sort of talk about this item is probably 2 to 3 minutes. This item is probably 10 minutes. This is probably going to be like a 30-minute item, or like the way you guys received assessment results this year. That was partially staff, but also partially talking to Jen of let's break it up, because no one wants to sit here for an hour looking at assessment results.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things we want to look at because it's our first set of data.
And a way to cover yourself, if somebody wants a long presentation on like CAS data, something like that, have a study session. You say, we're going to have a study session starting at 4:30 on the CAS. If you want details, then please feel free to come. We'll talk about it for an hour. People want to come to it, fine, but you give the option of board members not to come.
Oh, so a study session, not all of the board has to come?
No, you can have a study session and not have a quorum. If you don't have a quorum, it's not a board meeting. But a study session, you're not taking any act. Usually 99% of the time, you're not taking action during a study session.
So does a study session need to be agendized?
Yes. It's analogous to if you have a committee of the board, it still has a relationship to the board, and the public needs to be able to come to the meeting.
But we don't need to establish a quorum because there's no action.
No, there's no action being done.
If you wanted to have a study session at the end of a board meeting, would you just adjourn the board meeting then and then have the study session?
Well, let me answer the first thing. I would never have a study session after a board meeting.
I'm just trying to think through the hypotheticals of it, because it makes sense to me how you could agendize it with a study session before the board meeting. You have the study session, then you open the meeting, right? But I guess we would want to close the meeting.
If you had a morning board meeting and you wanted to, have it. The reason I said flippantly I wouldn't have it after is that usually they're so tired that they get grouchy. And I'm sensitive to people who get grouchy. Okay, can I move on?
Yes.
Okay. Follow steps on policy. This is policy revision. I'm not getting into that. If this is inaccurate, you need to change it. Policy revision. Public meeting law. Hang on. This is briefly. If someone talks on community, it comes and talks on an item not on the agenda or even an item on the agenda, but particularly an item not on the agenda. Not on the agenda. If I come to speak on an item not on the agenda, can board members ask me questions? Or should board members ask me questions?
No.
No. The best thing for board members to say when an item comes before the board that's not on the agenda is a 2-word thing. Thank you. That's it. Any more than that, you're getting into discussion. You cannot have a discussion unless it's properly agendized. So if you have someone come up and just talk about an item, no matter what it is, board members, please say thank you and go on to the next item. Or thank you, Joe, could you put it on the agenda for the next time? Don't get into a discussion. That's what this is about.
Okay.
Executive director, roles, relationship with the executive director. Joe, you notify the board on all these items, right?
Yep.
Okay, next one. You organize the staff in the manner. You organize the staff in the manner that best serves the charter. So Mr. Jones next year is going to be my son's teacher. I want Mr. Jones to be my son's teacher next year. So make sure Mr. Jones is his teacher. Can a board tell you Mr. Jones has to teach whatever, let's say that's 6th grade. If Mr. Jones, don't move Mr. Jones from 6th grade. Can a board tell you that?
No.
No. You can organize the staff in a manner that best serves the needs of the charter. Here's the key thing. As a courtesy, you'll provide appropriate notice to the board in advance of an action being taken. If Mr. Jones is God's gift to teaching and all hell is going to break loose, all heck is going to break loose. If Mr. Jones is reassigned, you better give the board a heads up that controversy is going to come. If you think there's a potential controversy, consult with the board before you go public with it. That makes sense? So if you have the freedom to do whatever you want, politically speaking, you may be a walking demonstration of being dead right. You've heard the story about the guy walking across a crosswalk. He's come to the crosswalk, and legally speaking, the cars are supposed to stop while he crosses the crosswalk. He wasn't looking both ways. He just walked across the crosswalk. The car came up, hit him, killed him dead. Was the guy right? He had the right to be in that crosswalk because the law says that? You betcha he was right. He was dead right. And so you need it, so you don't be dead right. Or make sure you be sensitive.
Exactly.
Make
While
sense?
we're worrying about how morbid you are, everyone who's dying in your example.
Everything is so
Yeah, I know, got it. Okay, you speak on behalf of the board. Does the board chair is authorized to speak on behalf of the board when necessary? When necessary is when Joe did something illegal or sexual misconduct. That's the only time. So when that time is necessary, you're probably likely going to have a lawyer speaking to the public. So fundamentally, Joe speaks on behalf of the board and the charter. Any questions about that or any need for redefinition? Moving on.
No, we're good.
Thank you. All conflicts between the executive director and the board will be handled in closed session with the executive director being in attendance. If you have a problem with the executive director, you have the guts enough to tell him directly to his face, deal with it. And fundamentally, if it involves a conflict between two people, it's a personality conflict. That's between the board members and board members. If you have a problem with each other, don't suck anybody else into it. If you have a problem with the executive director, don't suck anybody else into it. If the executive director has a problem with the board member, don't suck anybody else into it. Deal with the issue on a one-to-one basis. But when you do the evaluation, that is the only time your executive director should not be there or have an expulsion. Your executive director, if you have a problem with him, you need to say that for the board and as a whole, do it in closed session. Say what you got to say in front of the rest of the board, but it should be about his working conduct, not his personality. But that's evaluations can get into personalities too. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions on this one?
Nope, sounds good, everyone.
Okay, this is about, I'm looking at my time. This is about the superintendent who has a terrific wife, terrific guy. He's the nicest guy in the world, a great family. He's just so neat, and he talks to the Rotary so well, and he gets along with everybody so well. And Andy advocates for a raise. Fundamentally, it should be about performance, not about just about personality. Personality applies, but not just about personality. Prioritizing objectives, you know what that means. You know how important that is. You went through the process of prioritizing your objectives. You know about this. I can skip this unless you have a question about it.
No question.
Hey, the executive director, hey, Joe, I may get this over earlier than I thought it would be. The board will set aside.
This is an advanced group.
That's true, it is. And that's no joke. You have a really good board. You're really blessed to have a really good board. And the board, you're really blessed to have a really good CEO. And I have a lot of experience with both, and I don't say that very easily. I have been around a lot of bad boards and not so good superintendents. Okay. Consultation with the executive director, evaluation process and documents will be developed and approved by the board by October 31st. So you have an evaluation process we're about to go through. What is it, Joe? February, March. Yeah. And so, and is there anybody on the board who hasn't gone through the evaluation?
Doug has not yet. Yeah, it'll be Doug's
So
first
basically
time.
what happens, Doug, is that I'll ask you to give a rating. Let's say you're board member number 1. I'll bring these ratings to you. I'll come to a meeting and I'll go, Doug, you're a 5. You know, number 2, talk to me about why you think Doug's wrong. You're board member 1, Doug, and he'll go, oh, Doug's wrong by this, this, and this. Doug can say, okay, I'll change my 5 to a 3. Or Doug's really good at convincing him, and he can change his 3 to a 2. So this is a discussion, and I will bring, and I'll ask you for comments. If you evaluate him anything above a 3, I think you need to have a comment to that effect if possible. If you evaluate him anything less than a 3, you need to have a comment as to why. So that's basically how it works. You'll be receiving a document to fill out and complete to me, send it back to me, and then we have comments and we go from there.
Got it.
Okay. And then one of the things that I would emphasize, this is usually a good time to do it, sometimes evaluation. Every time you evaluate your CEO, you need to ask this question. Do we want him to continue on with us? If so, then you need to be prepared to extend his contract and make him offers he shouldn't refuse. I was in my small district. I started with 200 kids and left when I was about 600. I stayed there 13 years. I should have left after 3 to 5 years for my career because I should have done that. Why I didn't? They kept making me offers I couldn't refuse financially, and I was having fun. And if your superintendent's having fun, your CEO's having fun, and you want to keep him, I'd suggest you look at his contract very seriously and make the decision to maintain the quality, make him blink. What you do is what they call golden handcuffs. You find out things that they're calling, it's tax shelters. There's a variety of ways to handcuff your CEO to make it so. Fundamentally, this is what I used to get. I used to get headhunters calling me saying, well, we got this job with big districts and so forth. And I go, I'm happy. I'm not really interested. How much? And they go, this one district went 250, this is 15 years ago, $250,000. And I go, I just blinked. Talk to me about this. You don't want him to blink. You want him to be able, if you have, or him or her, you have a good CEO, look at their contract. You need to be, and your board president needs to know when that contract is coming up. And I teach all my CEOs, you don't ever have a contract less than 18 months left on it. You need to have 2 cycles to get out. If your board doesn't want you to be there, cycle 1 is for between January and July of each year is a cycle. So you have 2 cycles to get out. That's 18 months. So basically, anything January of a year, 18 months out, you need to be able to have a contract that's at least 18 months. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that philosophy? And
No
right
questions.
Okay, yeah, okay. All right. Principals, you should expect that you will make mistakes with your protocols. You need to self-monitor your behavior. Don't expect your superintendent and your staff to monitor your behavior. You need to monitor your own. Behavior that's in conflict with the protocols and agreements erode trust. Behavior that is not challenged is condoned, which makes for dysfunction. And confronting another staff member, saying, Andy, you're not doing what you need to do, can be difficult. If it's done poorly, it can be damaging. If done correctly, it demonstrates that the board is a highly functional team. And so fundamentally, make sure you follow your protocols and understand at times you're going to probably violate them, but take ownership. Okay, orientation of new board members. You have a commitment in this protocol that the orientation in the middle of paragraph will be a conversation overview of the following things. Questions will be answered, board meeting structure, the contract will be there, the objectives will be there, the board policies will be there, the overview of services and programs will be there, major challenge will be there. All that will be discussed in an orientation. Does that take place, Joe?
Yes.
Yes.
So you don't have to hang out and go through it.
Okay. They laughed. That's because it doesn't take place, or it does take place?
It does. It does. It does.
Okay. 90 days after the election, appointment of a new board member, appointment of a new executive director, and a study session of the whole board will be held for the purpose of reviewing and updating the governance protocols. Historically, how that's functioned, you've had somewhat of a convenient. Joe basically, I think, along with the board president, works with the individual board member to review the protocols. And so it's not done like in this way. I think Joe and I think the board made the decision to do a little more formal this time. We did such. This is our last protocol. I would encourage you, if you have a whole new board in the next 3 to 5 years, that not me, but one of my consultants come in and do a full day workshop. Because we don't get into leadership styles in this workshop, but in our full day workshop, we really get into leadership styles and how you lead and how that impacts others. It impacts your board as a role as a board member, but it also impacts your business life and your family life, because it's a really good workshop. There's 2 or 3 hours in the mornings about that, and the rest of the day on protocols. And so don't hesitate to do that next couple of years, 2 or 3 years. Are there any questions before we close out? 7:33, Joe.
Good job, Walt.
Told me an hour and a half. If not, thank you, and I hope this was helpful.
Yes, thank you, Walt. We appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everybody.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thank you.
All right. So, do we want to do last couple items?
Yeah, executive director comments.
So, executive director comments. First of all, it's November. Next week is Thanksgiving. So, we're here on campus. We're really focused on gratitude. So, on behalf of the staff and students, just want to thank the board for all your time and dedication and everything you provide to the school. We have had some exciting things going on. Wizard of Oz was this weekend. This evening, if you heard loud voices, it's because Something Rotten auditions are going on. So Something Rotten is the spring musical that'll be opening up. Thursday night, I might see a few of you at the Kings game because it's NCS night at the Kings. And we have a group of PFA and Star Academy performers doing the national anthem as well as the halftime show. So they'll be doing the Kings halftime show. Let's see what else is going on. We do have Thanksgiving break showing up. And one thing that I will call as a real success, thanks to our facilities manager, Francisco, is we have Natomas Unified actually coming out and doing some pretty substantial work on our fields over Thanksgiving break. So they're actually going to be aerating, fertilizing, and reseeding both the Star Academy and the Black Rock campus fields this coming weekend. Last weekend, they actually took out some dead trees for us. We had a few trees that died when it was 116 for that week. So they came and took those out. And then the second weekend of Thanksgiving break, they're actually going to be resurfacing the track here. So it'll still be decomposed granite, but basically this weekend when they do some of the seeding, they're going to kind of clean it up and then put a new layer of decomposed granite down. And that's kind of, I think, how we'll leave it until we look at the future construction project. So we'll have that taking place over Thanksgiving break. And then when we come back from Thanksgiving, we have the winter vocal concert on December 1st and 2nd. So stay tuned to your email for information on how to get tickets. That's usually a very fun and very popular concert. So I would encourage you to get tickets early if you want to go, or let me know if you want to go. That's all I have for comments.
Thank you. Board of Director comments.
I have a question, just on the last page of the governance handbook, page 11. The last section where it says ongoing implementation of board approved protocols, new board members, and then in parentheses, elected or appointed. The elected kind of made me pause for a minute.
Oh yeah, we should probably take that word out and we should use appointed because that's actually what fits with our bylaws. That's a good catch.
Okay, yeah.
I think this is because this is a protocol document that is also used with school districts sometimes that have a more formal election process. Yeah, that's it. Thank you for that feedback.
Any other comments? Any future board agenda items? I know.
I like the study session idea. I didn't think about it that way. So that, you know, when we want to do something, like I know Addie and I have been talking about trying to do, and now I'm going to call it a study session, but we were calling a presentation around some of the DEI work that we've been doing, but we knew it was going to be like a more extensive conversation. And so we were like, do we really want to do like a 2-hour item on a, you know, so we're trying to think through that, but maybe doing a study session might be a way to do it, because then we could also open it up to like staff and community members as well, you know, and it's not a traditional board meeting format, but maybe we do a study session like Walt was suggesting, like, I don't know, 4 to 5:30 or something, and then we roll into public meeting, so.
Yeah, I do like that.
6 a.m. study session?
You'd be the only one here. You know your stuff.
Yeah. We'd be running the track.
All right.
There's no other future board agenda items. I will adjourn our meeting at 7:38.